What's up, everybody? Welcome to Production Music Live. My name is Guido, and I am from Cat and Beats. And today we're going to be doing something fun. We're going to be making a snare drum snap, or smack, or crack, or pop, or thump, or whatever word you want to use. What that basically means is we're going to put an accentuation on the first part of the transient, so the first part of the snare where it really hits hard. We're going to make that louder, and we're going to make the tail end of it soft or less loud, and then what you'll have in total is a snare drum that looks a little bit like that. You can, if you want to, also do that with volume automation to kind of shape it out like that, but it will never ever sound the same as a properly set up compressor. Now, the reason we're going to be doing this is sometimes you find yourself listening to your own song and you're thinking, man, I wish my snare drum would be louder, and then you turn your snare drum louder and you're like, man, now it's too loud, and you play that infinite game of -1, -1, -0.2, +0.2 dB, and it's really annoying. And sometimes the answer is just getting a compressor out to put emphasis on that first little part to make it go instead of. And that's really a nice thing to do, and specifically to learn. So let's just learn how to set up a compressor. So if you follow along, get yourself a compressor. Get yourself a snare drum as well. So a compressor, just put it at the end here. Basically, go to all results, write down the word compressor, and then drop your audio effect at the end of your snare drum track. Get yourself a snare drum. I'm using, for demonstration purposes, I'm using the snare drum 0004. I'm using this one. You can follow along too. So first, make sure you cut off the low end. Make sure you turn off the makeup gain, because with makeup gain turned on, the snare drum gets ridiculously loud. So that's that. Now, check this out. The way I like setting up a compressor is to completely abuse it. The reason why is because then you can really hear what the compressor is doing. So right now, the snare drum sounds like this. But we're going to do something silly. We're going to take the ratio and put it all the way up. Put the attack all the way down. Release all the way down. Threshold all the way down. And now it sounds like this. Nothing. The reason why is that the compressor is not really letting anything through. Now, because it's set up like this extreme, we can also really listen to what it means when you put an attack time up. Because when you put an attack time up, you're going to let through that first little click, that first little tick of the snare. So let's just put the attack time up until we hear it. I also suggest you don't use your mouse for this, but you just use your finger on the keyboard and hold it down, and it will slowly rise up. And then when you hear that first tick, then you can understand where the compressor lets through that first transient. So let's just do that, and let's just let it go up. Okay, so the first tick is coming through. That's the first little click, a tick of the snare drum. Now, every snare drum is going to need a different type of attack setting, because every mix is also different. So if you're more into experimental clicky sounds, then this attack time is going to be great, because you're putting emphasis on that first little ticky sound of the snare drum. But if you're making a track that's more pop orientated or rock orientated, then getting the meat of the snare drum to come through is also nice. So the further we put this attack time up, the more meat, the more oomph is going to come through. So let's just do that. Now, the more we go up, turn this down, the whole snare is going to come through again. See? So it's not doing much of anything. So let's just bring that back until we just have that, like, that thud. I think about there sounds about right for me. Now, after that, so once you've set up the attack time, again, every attack time is going to be different according to your snare drum. So just follow along with your own snare drum if you like. Then set up the release time. And again, what we're going to do with the release time is we're going to try to isolate that that part of the snare. So we're going to put that up slowly. And what you'll notice is that the tail end of the snare drum will slowly disappear a little bit. So before, put it up. So about there sounds quite nice to me, as really putting like brackets and exclamation points on that first transient. Now what I want to do is go to the ratio, and we're going to put the ratio back up so we can let the original snare drum that's playing breathe a little bit. Now, I do suggest you do this in a context of a song itself. Okay, so right now I'm just doing it on the snare, but when you put the ratio back up, just put the ratio up when the whole mix is playing back. Okay, but let's just put this up until the snare drum breathes again. So nothing, just the snare drum. Okay, around there sounds about nice to me because we're really getting emphasis on that snare drum. And then after that, go to your threshold and bring that back up again as well until you feel that it sits nice, so that we have a little bit more of the tail and it's not just a snap like a but it's also a the end part's coming up. We're just going to put that up. Okay, so now we have a very extreme setting, as in we're really putting emphasis on the front part of the snare drum, just for demonstration purposes. So what you can do now is you should now set up your A/B, so you can listen to if it sounds good or not. I still suggest you don't put up your makeup gain, and you just use these output control. Let's just have it before. It sounds about right. Sounds really, really, really heavy, as in really heavy compression, which is really quite nice to have. We have more controls on top of this, so if you want to go a little bit more advanced, you can actually change the attack and release time characteristics. So you don't have to do this, by the way. You can also just work in peak mode and that's it. If you want to, you can change you click over there, and you can change your logarithmic or go into linear mode. Now, linear mode is going to be a lot more aggressive. You're going to have to, you can hear it. You can only hear that first tick now coming through instead of a little bit more of the snare drum, remember? So now you know how to listen to compression. So I like logarithmic mode a little bit more unless I have a really big problem. You also have RMS mode, which means root mean square. And then you have two modes again there. And which is strange about this Ableton compressor, normally you would think that the peak compression mode would actually work a little bit nicer for this, but for some weird reason, the RMS mode is a lot more aggressive than the peak mode for peaky snare drums, which is an odd thing to have. Now, on top of all that, we have the knee. And what you can do with the knee, which is this thing, let me turn it back up. You can do with the knee is you can make it even more aggressive. I suggest you just leave it at 6 dB because it's already aggressive enough. But if you want, you can make it even more aggressive by making it a hard knee. Oh, shit. I was already thinking what's going on. So a hard knee or a soft knee, but right now I can't really hear the difference. Oh no, there's a little bit of a difference. I tend to have my knees always really, really soft because it's a little bit more musical. So that's that. Now, on top of all this, because you know me, I always go a little bit further than the usual amount. this is all great and fine and dandy, but it's not only getting the first part of your transient to come out, it's also thinking about EQing. I like to EQ after my compression. So I first set up, you clean up your low end, because you don't need all this low end. You just kind of take that out. And then after it, you get your EQ again, your EQ8, and you kind of start listening to your track and deciding, do I need a little bit more top end, 7K and up, to make the snare drum snap out of the track a little bit, or do I need more 200 hertz to make it more thumpy? Do I want that part, or this part? Now, every snare drum and every mix will be different, so it depends on what you like, and you can then do really crazy parallel compression with different snare drums, but for now, this is the easy thing to do. So EQ it after. It's going to be easier. And then on top of that, what you can do, if you've watched my mixing and mastering course I did for Production Music Live, you probably know, or we've worked together, you probably know that I love my return tracks. And you set that up via clicking here in the empty space, and you click on Insert Return Track. And the reason why is when you add a little bit of saturation, and I have my favorite one here, which is called the Aphex Vintage Exciter. Put it onto auxiliary mode. And I have two other ones from Ableton that I use quite a lot. You can then really make your snare pop out. So you have your EQ, but then you have your excitement as well. So that's a little bit of distortion. So watch this. See how the top end's like, it's just like smiling to you. So that's one way of getting it to pop out even more. So before, remember, it sounds like this. And after, you have this. Well, it's a little bit more quiet right now. Before, after. That's a really nice little EQ. You can also think to yourself, if you want a different color, because I like Aphex, doesn't mean that you have to. You can also use a blues amp, but that filters a little bit. See? Same with the rock amp. But trust me, if you put this into your problematic snare track, it's really gonna pop out. It's gonna the same compressor setting wise, how to set that up, is gonna work exactly the same for your percussion, for your kick drum, for any percussive element. This is a really easy way to set that up. Now, on top of this, if you're like me and you think, I'm going to put everything like that and it's awesome, oh, finally I get that sound, most likely a week later you're going to get kind of tired of the sound because all your tracks are going to be super pokey. I suggest you leave your compressor setting the way it was, but then go to your dry wet knob of whatever is poking you in your ear too much and just turn it down. And you'll be fine after that. And then we've covered also something called parallel compression. Well, that's it for this time. I hope you've enjoyed yourself. Again, my name was Guido from Cat and Beats. If you feel like coming over to my channel, come say hi. If you're interested in the mixing and mastering course I've done for Production Music Live, check out the description below. And I wish you guys all a happy Sunday. I'll see you guys again in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.